to have this conversation. I have with me Imesh Liyanage. We have discussed various components of attack surface management, and today, very specifically, we are going to talking about the challenges involved in implementing attack surface management. So to have this conversation, I invite Imesh to share his views. Imesh?
Hey, Sujit. Good to be here. So let me sort of jump in. In terms of ASM, implementing ASM is actually one of the more easier security tools to implement because it's external and there's not a lot of it's a sort of a low touch thing, right? You can give your domain names, IP addresses, and
Oh,
the
it's simple
mapping
as
can
that,
start.
is it? Simple as
Yeah,
that.
it's as simple as that. But where we see challenges in implementation is after we do the mapping.
All
Because
right.
unless the company has first done sort of security awareness to their team and their leadership and there's executive buy-in from the highest level, what you do after this discovery, okay, we know, okay, we have this many assets externally exposed, we have these many vulnerabilities, and then IT team with attack surface management, it's smaller the better, right? How do we reduce our attack surface? But then there's multiple services that are only used internally by internal employees but are exposed publicly. And when you ask why, it says, this manager is always traveling, so he needs to access it from something similar, the usual things that we get. And when you ask them, can we put it behind a VPN? It's like, no, they find it difficult or inconvenient to log into the VPN. So unless you have that buy-in from the organization that says, is it absolutely essential that this is publicly available? And if the answer to that is no, I mean, there's a better way we can secure this. It can be your SASE, it can be your VPN, whatever solution that you're using. Use that. But if you need that executive buy-in to be able to execute those changes. So that is where we see sort of the pitfalls of an ASM strategy rather than on the technical side of things. Technically, I mean, the usual thing that we see is a lot of noise and false positives sometimes. We've, over the years, we've tweaked our algorithm so that we have false positive rate of now, I think, less than 5%, which is one of the lowest in the industry. But technically, it's stuff like that. But the real blocker is the organizational culture that you need to change to be able to implement ASM. This is external ASM.
Sure. So how well does it reduce the effort for the organization? You said implementation is simple as, assigning an IP address and, turning on a few buttons here and there. But does it reduce the load on the resources to manage the assets in terms of patch management and things like that?
Definitely. I mean, it depends on the tool that you use, but when you are using something that's a little bit more fully fledged, it would do the discovery. It would also do the vulnerability, sort of fingerprinting the assets to see what versions they're running, check if there's any vulnerabilities on these assets, and then also give you the vulnerability intelligence saying, this is something that's trending, this is linked to ransomware, this is on the CISA KEV list. All those data points also are made available, so you can easily prioritize those as well. So that's the way that we do it. We try to make that data as actionable as possible rather than a very long list of things. Prioritized actionable list is what you should have at the end of the day to make your life easier as well. And in the long term, of course, it makes your life a lot easier because the less things you have externally chasing, the less work that your SOC will have to do, the less work that your SIEM has to do because there's less endpoints for them to be constantly monitoring for that. So that's how it can reduce work. But the more tools you integrate, like we spoke about in the earlier episode, it's a team sport. The more integrations that you do, is every finding that you get in your ASM platform automatically alerted to your security team, right, for them to go and investigate. Because are you going to be logging into your ASM platform every day or stay logged into it all day, all day long? It's unlikely. So you have to integrate with all of those to make sure that there's alerts flow, and then people can go and investigate and make sure those alerts are either checked, remediated, investigated on time.
So, are there any other challenges? Now, for example, you did speak in an earlier episode where modern technologies, the use of AI, ML can be used. Now, how much of human involvement is required? Is it completely human supervised activity, or can the tool do everything by itself? Is it human in the loop or human out of the loop?
It's human is involved, but it's involved in more of a verification capacity rather than actually doing any active work as such. So it would come back to you with the result set, and then as you say, like you can say this is not relevant to me, or this is a false positive. You can mark those, or this vulnerability has been patched, or we've had a workaround, or we've accepted the risk. We know this vulnerability is there. We don't have the budget to fix it. We've accepted it. So that's sort of where the human element comes in. And also, we also make accommodations for, let's say you run your own active scanning on your external attack surface based on what the ASM tool finds. You can bring that data in as well, because different scanners detect different things. So you can bring that data in, further enrich the amount of data that you have on your attack surface. And that also helps to reduce the amount of one sort of work that you have to do, because you can, rather than reduce the amount of work, getting a higher return on investment on existing maybe external scanning that you're doing, external penetration testing that you're doing, and bringing all of that into one place, so that you continue to get value from those investments that you made, rather than that being a different silo, and you got that report, you got the PDF, and it's sitting in some Google Drive for audit purposes. I think that is sort of the amount of work that's involved, but usually at the start, it's quite a lot, or relatively a lot. But as you start minimizing your attack surface, then you only have to look at anomalies rather than, investigate if every single thing that you find should be exposed. Once you've done that first sort of hygiene check, it's only, let's say, something accidentally comes up next month. You just need to investigate that.
So Imesh, you've been actively involved in product development. You've been actively involved having this conversation with various customers. What would your advice be to somebody who has never thought of adopting ASM? What would you tell them?
I think what I would tell them is you're already being scanned. You're a part
Somebody
of
is doing it free
reconnaissance.
for you.
Someone's already doing it for you. They're just not sharing the results with you.
Yep.
So because of that, what I would tell them is, do some sort of attack surface mapping, right, as soon as you can, because someone's already doing it on you. So you might as well look at what they're seeing, look at yourself from an attacker's perspective, and see if you look like a easy target, basically, and fix those entry points. Because, like, if you're just worrying about the next 0 day or like some exotic, sophisticated, complicated attack, while you still have a glaring 5-year-old vulnerability that's and there's a publicly available exploit on exploit.db that anyone can download and execute. So you should really just concentrate on where your biggest risk is and go after those, remediate, find that as early as you can. So start with ASM, because it's easier than even doing a vulnerability assessment or a penetration test. It's very low touch. It's a good place to start. Everything else is absolutely necessary, but if you're a company that's very early in its journey, I think this is one of the easiest, cheapest, lowest friction ways to start on your sort of cybersecurity journey, I think.
Absolutely. And then also, I think you were also talking about providing that insights into threat intelligence and vulnerability intelligence. So do you want to say something on that?
Yeah, so the reason ASM is being used, it varies from industry to industry, right? What we've spoke about today, most of it was about companies protecting themselves in a more general sense. But we see a lot of our customers using ISM tool to scan their suppliers, right? And then they take some sort of corrective action if they fall beyond some sort of benchmark that they set. For example, sometimes their employees are not allowed to bring any electronic devices onto the premises. They have to use like a laptop that the company gives them rather than their own device. Then we see cyber insurance companies using us to monitor their policyholders. If that falls beyond a certain benchmark, or like they provide varying premiums. If you have a good cyber hygiene, your premium is lower. Bad cyber hygiene, higher premium. We see private equity firms and investment banks doing scanning on potential acquisition targets, right? Or M&A targets basically, so that they're just checking, are there any skeletons in the closet that's gonna cost us an arm and a leg after we buy them, to correct these, to make it to make that company secure and able to do business in whatever industry they're doing. And we actually see one company who's so they're part of a very sensitive high tech supply chain. They use us to scan themselves before their customer scans them, because their customer has a program where they scan all their suppliers. But so they work with us to scan themselves and fix everything in their attack surface before before their customer finds something and tells them, fix this, or you can't be a supplier in a supply chain anymore. So there's many sort of use cases that we see for ASM, and that's why like we say that no matter which sort of industry you're in, there is a value that you can derive from this. I mean, even if you're not consuming it for yourself. So some use cases I mentioned is people monitoring third parties. Even if you're a pen testing company, we have many customers who are pen testing companies who use the ASM tool to do the recon phase of the penetration testing, or like before they do a red team. Because rather than their people wasting time, manually doing a bunch of recon, or like going looking for leaked credentials, they use a product, pull all the credentials together, and then they find their initial foothold into these networks. So it's a very large and varying use case. And of course, as we combine this with other technologies like Chasm to cloud security posture management, application security posture management, and all the vulnerability intelligence coming in, we see the value of it and the number of use cases crazy.
So what I'm hearing from you is this should be one component of your cybersecurity strategy. Yeah. So Imesh,
Yep.
thank you so much for sharing these thoughts with us. My takeaway is that before others do a free scan and get you to spend huge amounts of money to later figure out what is your weakness or what has actually gone wrong. And those of you who did not hear Jeffrey, I said Jeffrey, he also did speak about the vulnerability management platform, and where you may want to go and listen to that video as well. But he went on to say that if we don't do it, somebody else will do it, and then eventually the bills will be going to be much higher. So ASM should form part of your strategy. Your external penetration testing is a process you would use to validate that your internal processes are working effectively, right? So with that thought, Imesh, I want to thank you for taking time over several days to have this conversation with us. I appreciate all what you shared, and I hope, and I sincerely hope, the viewers are going to benefit with all what you've shared with them. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for having me, Philip. And glad to share my thoughts, and I hope the audience finds it useful.